Welcome to another edition of Inside Boxing Daily. Tonight I am your host, Jeremiah Preisser, and with me is a special guest, a man who wrote a fantastic book on Arturo Gatti and Mickey Ward. Go ahead and check that out. Welcome, John Raspanti. How you doing, John?
Doing great, Jeremiah. Pleasure to be here with you tonight. How are you?
I'm doing very, very well. Mike is not here tonight because he's off. We got credentialed to the NCAA tournament, so they're off. In Ohio and other places, covering that and doing big things, and we're pretty excited about that because we got credentialed before they even had the tournament set in place. So just a sign that we're doing pretty good things. I also want to say that we're brought to you by mybookie.ag. You go to the banner on the website, click it, put some money down, you get some cash back. Also brought to you by the Retired Boxers Foundation, which is run by Alex Ramos. Go to the Facebook page, send him a message directly. He's a good dude. He's been on the show before. So make sure you support causes like that. So tonight we're going to be talking about a few different topics, and this is one of the questions that I've been wondering myself because I'm a part of the Transnational Boxing Rankings Board. I know a lot of our listeners are already aware of that fact, but this is just one of the questions that I kind of struggled with after watching Saturday's fight, and it's where exactly Errol Spence and Mikey Garcia should place pound for pound. And I think naturally you would swap the two at the very least. I've been reading a wide range of assessments. Some people are higher than Errol Spence's work than others. I've even seen some people on Twitter go as far as putting him number one. Of course, none of those people, write for the Ring magazine or vote for Transnational. And, Garcia, because of his loss, some people are exiting him out of the top 10 altogether. I struggled with that proposition, but I want to know what your thoughts on it. How high should Spence go? How low should Garcia go?
Well, Spence had some questions going into the fight, so I watched very closely, and I was really impressed, Jeremiah, because he showed more facets of his game than I had ever seen, and he wasn't the cold-blooded knockout assassin that night. He was actually more a boxer slugger, and he started to pick up the pace later in the fight, and he almost stopped Mikey. Later, I think it was round 8. He didn't have him hurt so much, but he was just pounding on him. So, for me, answering your question, he obviously has to be in the top 10. I would probably put him in the middle somewhere, around 5 or 6, what I was thinking, because he showed more than he had ever shown to me. He went 12 rounds hard. He was focused the whole time. He's got a very good jab. He went to the body. I thought that Mikey Garcia was going to give him a more competitive fight than he did. And you think about, I heard some of the complaints, but I'm thinking, this is a man, speaking of Errol Spence, he basically won all 12 rounds against a guy who was 39-0 with 30 knockouts. Now, we can talk about the size and all that, but still, Mikey is a very, very technically suave, savvy fighter. So I thought Mikey would win 3 or 4 rounds at least. So for what he accomplished, I have to put Errol Spence right around the middle, 5. He hadn't really fought anybody other than Kell Brook that had been that impressive. But to do what he did, I think he has to be right there around 5.
Yeah, and so this was kind of my conundrum was that when I watched Mikey Garcia move up to 147, I didn't think there would be that much of a difference because he had fought at 140 and he looked pretty good against Sergey Lipinets. But the one thing that I noticed when he was at 147, and correct me if I'm wrong, but he looked slow. He looked a little sluggish. He just didn't look as sharp as he was at 135, which I still think is his prime division and where he should go off. So this was kind of my thinking, and this is why I struggle to put Spence at 5 or even above some of these other guys, because it is a pretty loaded pound for pound list, and deservedly so. These are the best fighters in the world. But when I was looking at Mikey Garcia, the one question that I asked myself was, if he were to fight at 147 full time, where would he rate? Would he be a lower top 10 guy, a fringe guy? Welterweight is pretty stacked from 5 up, but below that, there's some newcomers and some guys with not a lot of experience. Then you got a guy like Jesse Vargas who does have a lot of experience, but lacks some of the the wow that a lot of the guys at the top had. So my assessment just seemed to be that Mikey Garcia was probably a bottom top 10 type guy at best at 147. To me, he just didn't seem to really fit in that well. And I understand that he's a pound-for-pound talent. Again, you've got to give Spence a lot of credit for it because, even Mike and I were talking about on the show before the fight even happened, hey, if Spence wins this in another way besides, just being physical and going and breaking Garcia down, he deserves a lot of credit. And I'm like you, where I saw a lot of facets to his game that, I really appreciated. He boxed more. I thought him coming out and establishing the jab was a really smart strategy. But again, it also struck me as if I'm really breaking things down, Garcia is not a pound-for-pound talent at 147. He's probably a lower top 10 guy. And so his resume really rests on Kell Brook, who I think is a damn good fighter, a lot of talent, and that fight was pretty close up until the stoppage. So to me, this is just kind of where I landed, was Spence beat a top 5 welterweight. I think he was actually number 2 by both the major organizations, and a lower top 10 guy. And so for me, I was just wondering if that was good enough to put him over, somebody like Rung Vasai, who beat, Gonzalez twice, and Estrada. I ended up voting for him to be about 7.
Okay. Yeah, that's reasonable. Sure. That's reasonable. That was hard. I mean, you made a lot of valid points. Mikey, he looked sluggish, like you said, and it was very strange. He tried to bulk up, and maybe that bulking up took away the speed. I mean, he was never the fastest guy in the world anyway, right, Jeremiah? But he didn't even have a lot of snap. It didn't appear. It was just. But I don't really want to take anything away from what Errol Spence did. Like I said, I mean, he wins all 12 rounds. That's very impressive. So I get what you're saying, and that it is kind of tough when you break it down like that.
Yeah, it is. I mean, I had a hard time with this one because I could see, your point where he was just impressive. I mean, the southpaw jab in particular was the thing that I was most impressed by because he even said, he said in the post-fight interview, hey, we all know Mikey has a great jab. That's what he was going to try to establish. And Spence just came out throwing it consistently and really helped take that away. But again, I do think it is at least partly a size factor because, I mean, it's hard to say what Errol Spence would be if he was a natural 135-pounder, but, it's just tough. It just seems tough for Mikey Garcia to establish anything with a guy that big throwing, that many consistent punches his way. So it is one of those tough debates, but I think, 5 to 8. I was conversing with some people, some boxing insiders, and some of them have him as low as 9. And either way, he's deserving of an entrance if he didn't have one before. I think both bodies had him, but I really like what I see. I don't want to get ahead of myself and say, this indicates necessarily that he would beat Terrence Crawford. But it is one of those things where it was a pretty good performance. And I also got a note, and I think you'd agree with me here, is that they marketed the fight very well. It was just all over the place. I couldn't get away from it on Facebook or social media, and they did a good job. And I heard that there was over 47,000 people in attendance, and the pay-per-view buys look as if they're going to be about 340,000.
Wow. Very good. Very good. Yeah, they both sold the fight well, and people were excited. I mean, I was excited on Saturday. Mike was excited. He sent me a text. Yeah, I'm really excited about this one. I wasn't when I was watching the fight. I wasn't surprised by what I was seeing. we all made our predictions, and I had said something about a decision, but still the anticipation when you have two fighters like this meeting, that's what boxing is all about. So some people were disappointed, but it's just, you just never know exactly what's going to happen. You want it to be a great fight, but wanting it to be and then it to be are two different things. So that's just the way it worked out.
Yeah, yeah, you're right. I mean, and we've seen, things like this in the past. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. And I just noticed that Garcia looked soft at the weigh-in. So that probably should have been a red flag for a lot of us, but we figured, with his technical ability, he'd be able to hang in there. But I want to move on to one thing that he said afterwards, and he still seems to be under the impression that he's going to win an alphabet title at welterweight. And personally, I don't see this. I'd like you to chime in, but when you evaluate the 147-pound landscape, you have Crawford holding a trinket. You've got, Keith Thurman, obviously Errol Spence, and then you have Sean Porter. And just personally, again, as good as Garcia is, and I do think he is a pound-for-pound level fighter at 135, I don't see him beating any of those guys. I just don't think he has what it takes to win there. And I know he'll probably, he's still sort of young, so he might wait around and try to cherry pick the weakest link whenever he can. But it only seems as if the welterweight division is going to move in a more unifying fashion, whereas Spence will probably get somebody like Sean Porter. Keith Thurman will probably get Manny Pacquiao or somebody like that. And then that will probably eventually set up Keith Thurman versus Errol Spence, or granted Keith Thurman beats Manny Pacquiao, but regardless, the winner of those two fights will be unifying their trinkets. And Garcia, to me, just has very, very little shot against Crawford. So to me, it seems like his chances are just highly unlikely. What do you think?
Yeah, we discussed this on our show on the Grueling Truth, the Ringside Boxing Show on Sunday, and we were disagreeing in a sense. I was agreeing with what you were saying. I didn't think that his future, I didn't think he should stay at 147. The guys were breaking it down that he would make the most money if he stayed at 147, which is true. If he fought one of the guys with the trinkets, as you said, he would, but I was thinking if he hung around at 147, he ought to have a Garcia versus Garcia fight. Let him fight Danny Garcia and see how he does. And I couldn't even guarantee you that he would beat Danny Garcia based on what I saw. And I agree, too, that I don't like those matchups. I thought that he should go down to at least 140, where he's at least closer to what I think is his correct weight. I agree with you. Again, I think 135 is what he should be at, and I think he said today, or in that article you're talking about, he could get down to 135. I don't know. If he can get down to the 135, he ought to just fight Lomachenko, though. That's the one everybody wants to see. But I don't like him at 147. He did not look like a welterweight to me. He looked soft, but that doesn't mean he wasn't in good shape. I think he was in good shape. He's just too small. He can't help that. And not everybody can move up like that. And he doesn't appear to have the power that he had before, which obviously happens. Some guys bring it up, like Manny Pacquiao brought it with him when he moved up, but most guys don't. Roberto Duran wasn't the killer puncher anymore. He could still stop guys occasionally, but he wasn't what he was at 135, So I don't like that, and it's going to be tough for Mikey. If I was Robert, I would be saying, look, I don't like you at 147, and I don't like those matchups. These guys are all bigger than you. I mean, Sean Porter is not as good as far as technically as Mikey, but he's stronger, and he's so aggressive, and he's another one who likes to show, look, people didn't like that decision a few weeks ago, fine, but he showed that other facet. He's a superior athlete, Sean Porter. So moving around like he was doing, he would give Mikey trouble. So I don't like that. If I'm advising him, I'm thinking, you know what? I think we ought to go down to 140 at least, or 135 if we can make it, and get a win or two. And then maybe we'll talk about trying again, but I still wouldn't like it. Again, it would be kind of a money thing. Maybe he would get a shot at Keith Thurman or something like that. But it seems kind of, I don't want to say convoluted right now, the thinking, but it's fuzzy to me. I don't think they're really seeing what happened to him last Saturday night.
Yeah, I agreed. I think you touched on something that I've espoused a number of times on the shows, and that's when he moved up. Once he left 126, really. Sorry. Once he moved up past 126, and he had weight problems there, so obviously he couldn't stick around 126 for much longer. But there's something I think more people should acknowledge, and again, it's something you touched on, was when you move up past these weights where you're best at, where it's like Adrian Broner. I think Adrian Broner is a good example. At 135, he had damn good power. He was a good body puncher. His stamina was better. And again, he was one win away from being the man at 135. All he had to do was beat Miguel Vasquez, and most people would have favored him there. Vasquez was spoiler and kind of tough to handle, but Broner looked talented enough to get that job done. And so my thing is, and I see it not only with Mikey Garcia, but I think Lomachenko and a number of other guys, is once you move up past these weights and you start giving up size, especially in today's game where weight cutting has become more of a science, and you have more divisions for these guys to just kind of stake their claim in, it becomes tougher. And so even to me at 140 pounds, I think Garcia's doing himself a disservice even there, because I look at guys like Regis Prograis, who is a big physical guy. I know he's in the WBSS right now. To me, he just looks like, even him, he looks like he'd be too much to Garcia for me. But that's why I would prefer him at 135. I think it's a more natural division. He looks tighter there. The Lomachenko fight is there, and I know that's the next biggest thing. And to me, I really want to see that fight, not only as a Lomachenko fan, but I of course, I do really like Garcia's style too. I think he's arguably the best technician in the sport when he's at his best. But to me, that's a legacy building fight. Lomachenko, as good as he is, he's stuck beating the Anthony Crollos of the world, and then maybe the Richard Comeys of the world, and guys who are just kind of, when you're as good as Lomachenko is, even beating guys like Anthony Crollo, who is ranked in the top 10, mind you, is viewed as fluff. I mean, it's viewed as a cherry pick. That's how good he is. So to me, it just makes sense legacy-wise, and I think financially that would do well too, especially after Garcia showing with Spence, that you get those two together and you have them fight it out for who's the best at 135. And Lomachenko is a byproduct of what I'm talking about too. Once Lomachenko moved up past 126, he was no longer at his peak. Again, I say that because again, he's given up size now. He's given up speed. These are things that are inherent benefits in the boxing game. And so, to me, Lomachenko's not a natural 135-pounder. Garcia is certainly not a natural 147-pounder. So, back to the original point, I don't see it against any of these guys, him, capturing a title at welterweight. I just think I don't, might as well. Yeah,
I totally agree with you. I don't either. I don't know why he thinks that he should be able to do that so easily. He made it sound like, I'm going to get my fifth title, enough to it. Mikey does his own thing, obviously. And if he's thinking that way, that's his right. But I hope somebody tells him. But then again, he's not necessarily going to listen. So I think he needs to get real.
Yeah, absolutely agreed. So with that, we're going to transition into the Deontay Wilder deal. So the rejection of DAZN. And again, I'm not big on this stuff. I try not to pay so much attention, though it's hard when you're doing a daily show. It's like you got to get elbows deep in this kind of stuff, because it's the daily goings on. So, Deontay Wilder rejected a deal from DAZN that would pay him, about, what was it, $50 million total, 2 fights with Anthony Joshua at $20 million apiece. And then, of course, the Dominic Brazil fight, I think, would garner him $10 million. Again, correct me if I'm wrong. So I'm wondering, because there's been a lot of speculation about all this, and you're reading some of the, some of the PR that's coming out from Wilder's people, and, Showtime seems to be happy because they helped build his brand and it shows loyalty. And Mike and I were talking about this, and again, chime in, of course. So Deontay Wilder he was talking about how he wants, generational wealth, so he can, not only will he be set for life, but his kids will be set for life. And $50 million, sounds like that kind of money. Of course, I've heard that, from other people that it would be a flat fee, and Wilder very well could be worth more, especially if he wins the first fight. So that was one of the credible objections that I heard for it. My problem is I think this whole thing could be ruined, and he might not get anywhere near that money if, for instance, he gets knocked out by Brazil. It's not probable, but it's plausible. I mean, anybody who's been watching boxing long enough knows that when you're a heavyweight, the risk is greater than it is in other divisions. Also, what if Deontay Wilder fights Tyson Fury in a rematch and he gets beat clearly, even more clearly, in my opinion, than the first fight, and then he's just kind of relegated to second-class citizen at that point? You know what I mean? Where, a loss basically puts the focus on Joshua and Fury, and he's just kind of, put out of those big paydays. His brand is not what it once was. A one in the loss column just doesn't do what it does. So what are your thoughts on this?
Well, I'm like you. I get tired of all the politics I think the promoters and the people around the fighters lie so much that I can't even trust what they say. I've always had a feeling, and Mike and I have disagreed on this, though, that Eddie Hearn really wasn't that anxious to get Joshua in there with Wilder, even though we all agree, I think, that Wilder isn't as good a fighter as, well, there's one guy, a certain lawyer, that I think thinks probably that Wilder might be better than Joshua, but maybe not. But
no, he does.
He does. Okay, he does. Okay, I figured. So it's just I lost my train of thought for a second. It's just with Wilder. See, in a way, when I heard this, I'll just say this: when I heard this, I thought to myself, wow, if it's money that he wants, then this was obviously, if you're looking at like you broke it down, a bonehead move. But see, I'm a real, I'm a kind of a loyal, not kind of, I'm a very loyal person, I believe. So the fact that he's staying with the original team, in a sense, I kind of like that. I thought, wow, he's going to stay where he is. Now, is it the most intelligent thing? Well, from everything you just told me and what I've read on my own, no. But he said that he's gambling on himself, whatever that means. So I'm thinking that he's just going to keep on winning, and then he's going to hit the lotto with one of the fights, right? We don't know when the Fury rematch is going to happen now after Fury signed his own deal. So I think it will happen, but maybe not this year. I was thinking maybe the end of the year. Fury shocked a lot of people. I wasn't really surprised by that either. I thought he was trying to milk his own career in a way, and that they would eventually fight each other. So much of it's just speculation, and then on their part, it's gambling, and boxing is gambling in a lot of ways anyway. So again, I don't really know, Jeremiah. I hear you, what you said, and the way you explained it. It sounds like it was a dumb move on his part. But he's looking at it from a different point of view from what I've read. Now, obviously, I don't know this for sure. And Showtime's looking at it, like you said, as a loyalty thing, and they feel they could build him up even more. Are they doing a very good job? Doesn't appear so. I mean, he's not exactly caught on, even though he's not boring. He's pretty exciting what he does. He's got that big punch, but he's, we've talked about his technique and his flaws and all that, so we know that. But So he's an interesting fighter to watch just because of all the things, and I don't mean in the ring so much too, just a lot of the things going on outside of it. So I don't know. It's like an enigma rolled up in a riddle. I don't really know what he was thinking on this. And look at Golovkin. He takes all this time and he signs with the DAZN. I mean, he wants Canelo again, and he's going to make a boatload of money. So you're going, good one there, Gennady. You did well. Wilder had a similar deal, but who knows? Maybe there's something we don't know. So on the surface, doesn't sound like he did the right thing for his generational wealth that you're talking about, but maybe there's a little bit more to it that we don't know.
Yeah, and I know even Shelley Finkel said that what Showtime is going to try to get Wilder, for the future is akin to what DAZN offered him. So I'm like you. I mean, I try not to jump to too many conclusions because I know how that goes in boxing. I mean, you hear this from a lot of fans, and it's like they've got the memory of a quarterback, who just threw an interception, right? It's like you just kind of fire, you get that interception, then you just forget about it. You move on to the next play. And so I'm very weary of making these hardcore predictions and, slandering guys, just for the sake of doing so. And and to me, it's all just too much drama anyways.
Yes.
I don't like getting too involved in all that stuff. But of course, because it's relevant, and again, we do a daily show, it's a must. But I'm like you, where it's hard to say. I mean, on the surface, it does sound bad, because obviously there are a number of ways this can go. Like I said, he could lose to Fury badly, and then those paychecks just aren't going to be the same. I mean, especially if he loses in convincing fashion. If you get sort of what the first fight was, but without any knockdowns, Wilder's stock drops significantly, in my opinion, because if you don't score the knockdowns, I mean, then for a lot of us, actually, when I was reading the scorecards on social media afterwards, it seemed as if the average was about 9-3 or 8-4. It seemed pretty clearly that most people thought Fury had won. So again, it could go a number of different ways, and again, it's all speculative. But let's imagine that he does lose to Fury clearly, and then his own stock drops, and then he just can't be sold like he used to. I mean, because part of his brand is not only 39 knockouts in 40 fights, but it's also him being an American. So a lot of people are trying to sell that, because it's been a long time since. It's been a long time since an American was a dominant figure above 200 plus pounds. So it is tough. I mean, let's imagine that however he does, you do have a fight like the first fight with Fury, and he ends up getting a stoppage. I think that does build his brand. And with, Anthony Joshua fighting over here, and trying to build his brand stateside, you would have a big fight between them. And so, again, this could go a number of ways. And I just think it's too difficult to say, well, hey, it was a bad move, it was a good move. There will be many of us in the future who will say, hey, in retrospect, he probably should have done this, or maybe he did the right thing. So until that point, we can't really make a judgment either way. So I'm with you there.
Yeah, and, I think a little bit of a clue real quickly is when he said, I'm betting on myself. I think he said that. I might be paraphrasing, but to me, that's a guy saying that if you were to ask him, well, what do you mean? He'd say, well, I'm going to beat everybody. I'm going to knock out Fury when we fight again, and then I'm going to knock out Joshua or whatever. So all his fights, he's going to roll the dice. He's going to win all of them. So that's kind of the way I took that. That he's going to win all his fights. He's got to think that way anyway, obviously. So.
Yeah.
To me, that was what he basically was saying. That I'm going to whoop them all, and I'll make the most money. I'll keep making more and more money because I'll be the guy who keeps winning. I mean, he could be wrong, obviously.
Yeah. Well, Yeah, well, and part of the good thing, actually, one of the things that is in his favor is even if he loses badly to Tyson Fury, he'll still be able to collect good paydays from then on out. I mean, just the way the heavyweight division works, they're in the business of recycling guys who have lost before, and you look at Bermain Stavern, and he's getting, right. I mean, he's getting a shot against Joe Joyce, which is unwarranted. I mean, he shows up like the heaviest of his career. I mean, so that is to his benefit as well. He will make decent paydays, even if he does get starched by Fury or, again, loses an even wider, what should have been a wider decision.
Yeah.
This can go either way, and we're just going to leave this one, without a conclusion because, again, we don't know.
Right.
Exactly. Yeah, and so we always do an on this day topic. I patrol Steve Lott's Facebook page and see what he has on this day, and then pick out what I want to talk about. And generally there's a lot of mismatches or you get some old fights in there, but the one that I found most interesting was Thomas Hearns and Iran Barkley had their rematch on this day. I'm sure if you're a longtime viewer of the sport, it just seemed like Thomas Hearns had kind of met his match there. I mean, even as great as a fighter as some of these guys are, sometimes stylistically you just can't get over the hump with some of these guys. I mean, there are plenty of stories throughout history where, again, like Ali Ken Norton, it's one of the examples.
Yeah.
There are plenty of them throughout history where, I mean, you look at a guy like Vernon Forrest, who was technically very good, high work rate. Just a well-rounded guy, right? And then you look at Winky Wright for Shane Mosley. Again, and the list goes on and on. Sometimes these guys are just kryptonite for others. I think you would probably even have that for Winky Wright and Tito Trinidad, to be honest with you, even if Trinidad was in his prime. I mean, that jab was just a thing of beauty. But Barkley just seemed to be that style's kryptonite for the great Thomas Hearns. And, a lot of us were surprised when he scored the knockout in the first fight, right?
Yes.
Hearns was clearly the favorite there. And he gets starched, and then a lot of people figured in the rematch, hey, maybe he was a bit flukish, and Hearns would outbox him. But no, Barkley went out there, got rough with him, used his size, and won a decision.
Yeah, Iran Barkley, again, that guy was a tough guy, I saw both fights, not surprisingly, and I was stunned when Barkley, because Hearns was having his way with him, if I remember correctly, in the first fight, and then I think it was the third round, right? He got hit with a right hand, and down he went, and he was going down, he got up, and then he got knocked through the ropes, if I remember right, and he was out on his feet. I mean, he was conscious, but he was done, and that was one of those where your mouth drops open, your eyes are wide, like, holy, I did not see that. So I remember thinking that Hearns would win the rematch just because he would outbox him. But the thing was, is Hearns' legs were always questionable. And this point, what was he, about 33, I think. And Barkley was a really good pressure fighter, and the fight was really close. I'm sure you remember, and I can't remember if I had Hearns winning. I think I do remember that I was thinking it might be a draw, but Barkley got the decision, and Hearns didn't complain. But it was a hell of a fight. And you're right. I mean, Barkley just had that style that was going to give Hearns problems. I was thinking about even Sugar Ray Robinson when he lost to even when he fought Ralph Tiger Jones, he lost to him, and it had a little bit to do with his style. This is a bit of a reach, but Randy Turpin gave the great Sugar Ray Robinson a lot of trouble. He lost the first fight to him, and he wasn't losing the second one, but it was really close. He could lose, and he knocked him out. So there are something, and nobody puts Randy Turpin even close to Sugar Ray Robinson. See, so it's like nobody puts Barkley close to Tommy Hearns. Nobody puts Ken Norton near Muhammad Ali. There was just some of these styles, and that's why we always try to say, I'm sure you do, and Mike, and we do on our show, styles make fight. You can't just look and go, oh, he's going to win. No, you got to look at the styles and analyze a little bit. But, yeah, Man, those were such good fights, and like I said, the first one was so stunning, and the second one was really a grueling back and forth fight. And Iran Barkley, like I said, man, that guy was a tough guy.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, in regards to Turpin, Turpin was he was kind of a quirky guy. He just had a style that you just don't often see. And again, even the greatest of the greatest can. Jeez, my throat. Sorry about this. But even the greatest of the greats can be thrown off by certain styles. I mean, like you said, Turpin. You look at the scorecards in the second fight before before Robinson won. It was still a close fight. I mean, Turpin was just a kind of a quirky boxer. And a very good one too. And it's funny because against Robinson, he was able to decision him in the first fight. He got stopped, but that was kind of one of his weak points was he didn't have a great chin. I'm trying to think of what knockout in particular. He fought some German middleweights, and I know he got starched cold. And I think
he got flattened. Was it the first round or something like that? Wasn't it?
It was a pretty rough knockout for Turpin.
Yeah.
But like you said, there was he was just one of those guys that gave Robinson trouble, and again, it was that way too. But I think you touched on something that's important too, though. Hearns' legs did not look the same to me. No. Obviously he wasn't the 147-pound version who gave Ray Leonard all he could handle. Especially I think around the 8th round, I think it was. Again, it's been a while since I've seen this fight.
Me too.
I did watch some highlights before I hopped on, but it seemed about the 8th round. Again, if I'm remembering correctly, and if I'm not, somebody can correct me. But it seemed like he started to slow down. He was more stationary, and a guy like Barkley was just going to come right at you and put his head in your chest and bang on you, especially when you're a skinny guy like Hearns. He just made a rough night of it. And like you said, Hearns was. Barkley was a damn good fighter in his own right, a rough customer, and, he had some tough ones with some damn good fighters. I mean, I remember he fought Michael Nunn close.
Yeah.
I know he ended up getting stopped in the first round against Nigel Benn. That was one of those. That was one of those things where you're just kind of like, what happened there? But of course, it was actually a technical knockout, and it was the 3 knockdown rule that got him out of there. And he had hurt Nigel Benn before, and then he got dropped a couple times. But Barkley was just a rough customer and a damn good fighter in his own right. And I'm not convinced of this myself, but I saw Rick Glazer on Facebook today saying that he will recommend Iran Barkley be put up for the next International Hall of Fame ballot. Personally, I'm not convinced he's a Hall of Famer. No. I think it should be combined to the best of the best. Though I know you wrote a book on Arturo Gatti, and you kind of touched on this topic. And actually, just kind of change gears for a second.
Sure.
I've actually been more of a defender of Arturo Gatti than a lot of others. And a lot of people, I think, unfortunately, use him as some sort of low bar. And these are my thoughts in regards to that. So Gatti obviously was not a supreme talent. He was not an all-time great in terms of accomplishments. But in every sport, you have these transcendent figures who, for some reason or another, outside of talent, have warranted induction. And the Baseball Hall of Fame is by and large viewed as the most prestigious. It's tougher to get in. And even they have, who is it, Bill Mazeroski? Or,
you read my mind.
How do you say that name? Bill Mazeroski.
Bill Mazeroski, beat the Yankees 1960 with home run, That's right.
Right. And when you look at his stats, I think he was, again, I know I'm going to be wrong here probably, but I think he was a 261 lifetime hitter, in a day and age when guys, you had a lot of guys averaging 300 plus. So he was one of those guys you look at his stats and you're like, oh, well, he's not, his stats don't warrant his induction, but he was a transcendent figure in the sense that, as you touched on, he hit that home run in the World Series. And, things like that are worth remembering. And so when you apply that to boxing, Gatti is that kind of a guy where say what you want about his skill or his accomplishments, he is talked about far more than the vast majority of Hall of Famers. Yeah. I mean, you almost never hear anything about, Frank Krause or, Billy Seuss or, not even much about Randy Turpin or, again, if you go, just go to the website and scroll down the list of names and then go to the forums. I mean, I've been patrolling the Facebook boards for years now. I'm part of the International Boxing Hall of Fame, right? You get, not the Hall of Fame, but the research organization. And obviously there you get, more fringe guys and, more hardcore discussions. But when it comes to the boards and who the average fan remembers, Gatti is certainly up there at the top of the list.
Yeah. Yeah, and I wrote in Intimate Warfare, I'm sure you were probably hinting about that. I wrote the thing why I thought he should be in the Hall of Fame and what my reasons were. And it was pretty much what you said, and I think I even used the Mazeroski myself as an example of somebody that face value, you look at him and you think, nah, he shouldn't be there. But then you open your eyes up and you think about what he accomplished, what he did, and you say, okay, I could see that. The thing about Gatti, too, that when we wrote the book and I studied him so closely, the thing I thought that was so fascinating about him was that in his second career, when he got with Buddy McGirt, Buddy made him more of a boxer in a lot of ways, and he was a slugger pretty much, and he was a darn good athlete, and he the second and third fight, especially the third one, he boxed more, and he showed. Talking about another facet to his talent. He showed that. Now, obviously, the thing is, was he ever going to be a top guy? No. But I think it's important when a guy gets everything he can out of his ability. Some guys do and some guys don't. But I think Arturo Gatti wasn't here long, as we know, and his career ended badly, as I'm sure you remember too. But as far as he could sleep easy in that respect, because he could say, I believe, well, I was given so much, and I got everything I could out of what I was given. And there aren't a lot of people that can say that. And he's remembered because of all those damn exciting fights he was in, as we know. But that impresses me. I like it when somebody can sit back and say, look, I didn't just give it my all. I had my all, and I gave it, and I hit it. And that's as good as I am. I might not be great, but that's it. You saw my best, and that, to me, that's important.
Yeah, and we also got to remember that it is the International Boxing Hall of Fame and not the International Boxing Hall of Talent. I mean, again, I am of the opinion, anybody who listens to this show consistently knows that I am of the opinion that only the best of the best should get in. Yeah. Besides transcendent figures, I do think there's a place for them. I mean, again, it does seem like the International Boxing Hall of Fame has become sort of a popularity contest, and it's a bit unfortunate because a lot of the foreign guys get locked out, and you even got to question some of the stuff that's going on up there. I don't want to get too deep into that stuff, but it's just one of those things that you have to acknowledge because boxing is a complex game. It's and it's not all about just world champions and this and that. I mean, that's what endeared us so much to guys like Rocky. The tough luck story and the heart and the grit and the excitement. And sometimes that's worthy of induction in itself. Again, guys who transcend the sport and make us sit back and watch and put butts in the seats and sort of embody, right? If you were to create a stereotype of a blood and guts warrior, right? That would be Arturo Gatti. And again, I think for reasons like that, I think it's worth considering, that he's worthy of this stuff. And again, I would caution against comparing him to so many others. Again, I just don't think it's correct to use him as a low bar because the reason he is in is not the same reason that Robinson is in or, Joey Maxim or a number of these guys. We have to understand that there are different criteria.
Yes. Yes, no, I completely agree. And again, I agree with what a Hall of Fame is supposed to be, the best of the best. That's the way it was created when we were younger and everything. But a figure like Gatti, it makes sense that he gets in. And it might not be as logical as we want it to be because we're thinking of the best, but there's more to it. You can't really be narrow about something like this. You have to allow yourself to open your eyes and look at it from a different perspective. And Gatti was that kind of a guy. He was that kind of a fighter. He was that kind of a figure. He was charismatic. He had all that. And he lives on. And that was, again, why I thought he deserved to be in there.
Yeah, and on that note, I'm going to encourage everybody to go out and buy John Raspanti and Dennis Taylor's book, The Intimate Warfare, The True Story of Arturo Gatti and Mickey Ward Boxing Trilogy. I have it myself. It was given as a gift to me by John Raspanti, so I've got to thank him for that. I know Mike has also read it and thoroughly enjoyed it. So, again, go out and pick that up. Treat yourself to something. We just had St. Patrick's Day, right? Mickey Ward was Irish. If you need an excuse other than just enjoying the book itself, there you go. Just buy yourself an Irish treat or something. But I want to thank John for coming on. He was the only one who said yes to this show, and I always appreciate sitting down and chatting with him. And as always, you can find the Ringside Boxing Show on their website. You can find it on thegruelingtruth.net every Sunday, of course. And generally, they've always got interesting guests. I mean, I know you guys have had anything from boxers to guys in movies and referees. I know Jack Reese was recent, and then Michael Carbajal before. So, again, go to the website, check that out. Go to their website, check it out, too. Give them a thumbs up, give them a like. Same with us. You can find us anywhere you listen to podcasts, Spotify, iTunes, Spreaker, Stitcher, wherever. The website itself, that's a good one, too. So we appreciate everybody who listens to this podcast. And again, thank you, John. I appreciate it.
Very welcome. Enjoyed it immensely, Jeremiah. Thank you so much.